She thought he was just another customer she could disrespect. When a successful black CEO walked into a diner one afternoon, he wasn't looking for trouble, just a quiet meal. But from the moment he sat down, a racist waitress made it her mission to make him feel unwelcome. The snide remarks, the cold glares, the blatant disregard, it was impossible to ignore. The other customers noticed too, some awkwardly looking away, while others whispered among themselves. But this CEO didn't lash out. He didn't argue. Instead, he stayed calm and quietly observed. What happened next was something no one in that diner could have predicted. How did he turn this painful experience into a lesson no one would ever forget? Stay tuned to find out how one man turned a moment of hate into an unforgettable act of empowerment and justice. You won't believe how it all unfolds. The CEO sat there, quietly sipping his water as the waitress continued her passive-aggressive behavior. She barely looked at him when she took his order, her tone dripping with disdain. It wasn't just the poor service, it was the way she made it clear he didn't belong there, at least in her eyes. The room felt heavy, like everyone could sense the tension, but didn't know how to react. Some people exchanged uneasy glances, while others buried their faces in their meals, pretending not to notice. What they didn't know was that this man wasn't just anyone. He had faced prejudice before, and he had learned to rise above it every single time. But this moment felt different. As he observed the waitress, the gears in his mind started turning. He wasn't angry, he was focused. He was already thinking of a way to respond, one that no one would see coming. As the waitress sunned his plate on the table without a word, the CEO thanked her calmly, his voice steady. She didn't respond, just walked away with a smirk. Across the room, a family whispered, stealing glances in his direction, their discomfort evident. A couple at the next table leaned in closer, clearly discussing what was happening. But no one said a word. The silence in the room felt louder than any conversation. The waitress, oblivious to the growing unease around her, continued chatting and laughing with other customers, treating them warmly, as if to drive the point home that her hostility was intentional. The CEO, however, wasn't rattled. He took his time with the meal, occasionally glancing at his surroundings. But behind his composed exterior, plans were forming. He had noticed something most people wouldn't, something that could change everything. And when the time was right, he knew exactly what he was going to do. The CEO finished his meal and calmly asked for the bill. The waitress tossed it onto the table without so much as a glance, her expression smug. She clearly thought she'd gotten the last word. But instead of reacting, he placed his credit card on the table and sat back, his calm demeanor unchanged. The tension in the room was palpable now. A few customers watched closely, sensing that something was about to happen, though they couldn't quite tell what. As she returned to process his payment, the CEO took out his phone. He wasn't scrolling social media. He was making notes, paying attention to details that no one else seemed to notice. The name of the diner, the employee roster on a wall behind the counter, even the manager's office tucked in the corner. When the waitress handed him the receipt, still cold and dismissive, he stood up. The room went quiet as he looked around, his gaze sweeping across the restaurant, before calmly walking out the door. What everyone in that diner didn't know was that this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The CEO didn't go far. Instead, he walked to his car and made a phone call, his voice calm but firm. As he spoke, the pieces of his plan began to fall into place. Back inside the diner, the waitress carried on like nothing had happened, oblivious to the ripple effect her actions had set in motion. She laughed with her coworkers, still smug about how she had treated the difficult customer. What she didn't know was that the man she had dismissed so easily was far more connected than she could imagine. Within hours, the CEO had reached out to a colleague who happened to be a consultant for small businesses in the area. The diner, it turned out, was struggling to stay afloat, and the owner had been desperately looking for investors. The CEO wasn't just planning to make a statement, he was preparing to make a move so bold that it would leave everyone speechless. But as he drove away, a surprising twist emerged. A young server from the diner came running out, waving him down. Her face was flushed, and her voice shook as she apologized for what he had endured. What she revealed about the waitress added an unexpected layer to the conflict and raised the stakes even higher. The young server caught her breath as she stood by his car. She explained how she'd seen the waitress treat customers like this before, targeting people she thought wouldn't fight back. "She thinks she can get away with it," the server said, her voice trembling. "But not everyone agrees with her here. I just didn't know what to do." The CEO listened carefully, his calm demeanor never wavering. He thanked her for her honesty and assured her she'd done the right thing by speaking up. The next day, the CEO made his move. He contacted the diner's owner directly, introducing himself as both a potential investor and a customer who had experienced the restaurant firsthand. The owner, eager for help, agreed to meet. At their meeting, the CEO laid everything on the table: his experience, his concerns, and his vision for the diner's future. The owner, shocked and embarrassed, assured him things would change immediately. But that wasn't the end. The CEO, now part owner of the diner, implemented policies that prioritized respect and fairness. The waitress was let go, but in an unexpected twist, it wasn't just punishment. The CEO reached out to her privately, offering her resources to confront the prejudices holding her back. While not everyone takes the opportunity, this story ended with hope for the diner, its staff, and a lesson that respect has the power to transform. The diner became a different place over time, welcoming, inclusive, and thriving under its new direction. The young server who had spoken up was promoted, her courage and kindness setting an example for the rest of the staff. Customers noticed the change too, and the once struggling restaurant began to draw a loyal crowd. As for the CEO, he quietly stepped back, letting the business grow on its own, while ensuring the values he had introduced stayed in place. The former waitress, after some time away, reached out to thank him. Though she didn't take the opportunity immediately, she had started making small changes in her life. The CEO reminded her that change takes time but begins with choice. This story wasn't just about revenge, it was about transformation. It showed how dignity and respect can spark change in the unlikeliest of places and how rising above hate creates lasting impact.